It's March 5th, 1964, and another remarkable event is about to be uncovered by Arion, Rebecca, and Olly, the Retrospectors.
It's not often that things get patented 5 years after they've been a huge fad, selling 25 million units in just 4 months. But that is exactly what happened when you have as rapidly adopted a trend as the hula hoop, which was finally intellectually protected today in history in 1963, an event presumably celebrated with much hip-swivelling gyration.
Yes, and in Arthur Spud Melin's defence, for it was he who had filed the patent, he did file it almost 4 years earlier in 1959, and reading through the application, it sounds like he actually originally tried to file for it a year before in 1958, but abandoned that for unclear reasons. The reason was probably connected to the fact that while the name hula hoop was a copyright, it was very, very difficult to patent the technology simply because it had been around for so long, and it was very difficult to come up with a way to describe in writing how your thing was special and unique.
Yeah, there's a bit of a contested origin story to the hula hoop. There's at least one story credits its existence to an Australian woman living in LA called Joan Anderson. And
you would
her
take her
role, of course. So let me present the Australian case before we perhaps debunk it. Let's see. She was visiting
the
Sydney. The Bonza Struth. And she was in Sydney in 1956, and she just back visiting family, and she noticed Australians twirling bamboo hoops around their waist for fun and exercise, and she became fascinated by that herself. And when she returned to LA, she had a hoop shipped over and began demonstrating it to friends, helping kind of spread the idea informally at least. And during one of these sessions, she says a friend remarked that her movements resembled the Hawaiian hula dance, prompting Anderson to coin the name hula hoop. And seeing its potential, she goes further. She says her husband, Wayne, approached Arthur Spud Melin of Wham-O in 1958 and showed him the hoop and explained both the activity and the name. And Wayne had a gentleman's handshake of an agreement, and that deal helped set in motion, at least again, according to Anderson, the mass production of the hula hoop, which eventually became a cultural phenomenon in the US.
I feel like I just have to interject here and say that I think it's really important to highlight that Joan Anderson was a former swimwear model. And I think this is a non-negligible part of the story, that she goes back to Australia to visit family, comes back, gets the hula hoop. She's suddenly demonstrating it at dinner parties and in front of friends and family, and everyone's saying, you know what, I think this could catch on. And I think this kind of comes up later in the story of the hula hoop as well.
What, just the fact of it needs to be seen to be believed. Once you've seen it, you want to get involved.
Well, it needs to be seen on an Australian swimwear model, yeah.
Right,
Did you see there was the first advert that ever appeared for it? It was from the Los Angeles Mirror, and the illustration isn't of a child. It's of a shapely woman. And it's explicitly described as being for the whole family. In fact, one of the suggested uses after playing games and exercising is reducing, like dieting. So really drawing attention to the woman's body.
Yes, I mean, that sort of sexy element was always there, regardless of how it ended up in the hands of Arthur Melin. In one of his obituaries, I read a quote from his wife, who said Spud, because that was his nickname, Spud brought it home and showed it to me. So he got his hands on this proto-hula hoop. His wife said, he said it would be huge, but I said, you can't put that on television. They just banned Elvis Presley's hips from the Ed Sullivan Show. There was this kind of sense of like, okay, we'll make it for kids then. Is that what we're doing? But if that's the strategy, then really, Spud Melin and his co-founder of Wham-O, for that was the company that produced the hula hoop, Richard Knerr, were the right people to have it fall into their hands. Because in an extraordinary career of novelty toys that tapped into the zeitgeist of 1950s America, they manufactured not only the hula hoop, but the Frisbee, albeit marketed under a different name, the Pluto Platter. We've talked about Pluto Mania before. The Super Bowl, the Water Wiggle, Silly String, the Slip and Slide, and the Hackey-Sack. I mean, that is a winning streak from two people who know what kids' toys are. So, I mean, however the idea came to them, they were the right people to exploit it, I think.
Yeah, and once again, they were really tapping into the cultural zeitgeist, because as we've mentioned before, hula was front of mind for Americans at the time, because Hawaiian culture was having a huge moment in mid-50s America. We talked about,
Also
pineapples on
Elvis.
pizza. Yeah, but also tiki bars, ukulele music, and hula dancing. These are all things that people were thinking about at the time and that was seen as quite cool. So as soon as you attach the word hula to hoop, people are already thinking, yeah, no, I get this. This is cool.
Yeah, and I think that is part of Knerr and Melin's genius and the genius of Wham-O even to this day. I went on the site and they're still appealing for people who have a good idea that maybe might want to work with them to send in their idea. And I went through the multi-step process of potentially submitting an idea just to see what would happen. And you get to the point where it asks you, is your idea either patented or patent pending? And if you say no, it kicks you out and it says, thanks anyway, we're not interested. Basically, they're looking for people who have got to a stage where they've got a thing, they own it, no one else is in possession of it, and they can bring it to the world in the same way that they did so many times since they started out just as graduates. Knerr and Melin, they were so fascinating. They met in their teens and became graduates of UCLA. They left their jobs just to start up their own company making toys. Their first thing was this powerful ashwood slingshot, which they promoted through live demonstrations. And the name Wham-O came from the sound that the slingshot made when it hit its target. So that was where they started out. But they were always hugely entrepreneurial, right up until the point where they encountered this hula hoop thing. Their genius was to make it out of a plastic called Marlex, which was rigid enough to stay upright when twirled, but light enough to be inexpensive. And they sold it for almost nothing. It was like less than $2. And I think that is another part of why it became so successful, because anyone could buy one.
Yes, that recipe across all of the Wham-O portfolio is consistent. So seeking ideas from the public is something that they always did, using in-house inventors to refine those ideas, creating a stable of around a dozen simple, inexpensive products that could be sold cheaply, but that price nonetheless represented a price 5 times the cost of manufacturing and promotion. That's the sweet spot. So they're all made out of plastic, like the slip and slide. Like, it's giant, isn't it? And, it looks really cool. It's just a sheet of plastic with some water. And then the other part of their recipe as well was they were making mostly garden toys, summer toys. So they could market their products when advertising rates were cheaper in the spring and the summer, because the toy market then as now was geared around Christmas. And also all the seasonal workers to make the things, because this was a time when factories in the States were actually involved in creating the thing and it wasn't done in China. They had toy makers who were on layoff from Christmas with naught to do. So they'd come and make the Super Bowl. So all of that was really, really clever and just absolutely the right recipe to conquer the States when they had the right idea.
Yeah, and the way that they got the fad going too, Joan Anderson said that when she was in Australia, she'd seen these children playing quite spontaneously with these hoops. Obviously, Wham-O wanted to get a kind of non-spontaneous word-of-mouth thing going, and the way they did that was by holding demonstrations in playgrounds. This was something that you could do at the time. It was actually pretty commonplace for new toys. That's how the initial yo-yo craze of the 1930s got going. Literally salesmen going from school to school, getting kids interested, and then they go to the next town and suddenly it's craze in the next town as well. And that's basically how they did it. But I have to say, out of fairness to your people, Arion, Australia had already had its hula hoop craze. The year before, Coles had started selling plastic mass market hoops just like the hula hoop, courtesy of an Australian toy maker called Toll Toys. They shifted around 400,000 of them in 1957, the year before they hit the market in the US. And 400,000 in 1950s Australia is a not inconsiderable amount of sales, but it has to be said it was the Wham-O version that took the craze global. I saw that the hula hoop craze inspired 4 novelty singles in 1958. 2 of them were called the Hula Hoop Song. One was called Hoopla Hula, and there was a rockabilly number called Hula Hoop Boogie, which I thought was particularly exciting. And I think one of the hula hoop songs broke the top 40, so people were really going wild. And this must have been adult record buyers, surely.
Well, and of course the delicious KP snack, which I still enjoy. In a way, that's the legacy, isn't it? Because the hula hoop itself is not something that I use regularly.
No.
But I still eat a packet of hula hoops very happily.
Does Wham-O know about the existence of hula hoops?
I reckon it's reached their desk.
They're crisp.
Tomorrow.
By the way, everyone, you can get free music online now.
Ditch the ads and get a Sunday episode when you join Club Retrospectors. Patreon.com/Retrospectors.